What's up, everybody? It is Chris Aiken from Aftershocks TV and the Classic Metal Show, and just wanted to give you a quick heads up before this next video of my probably my most well-known book, Call Me Chris, A Tale of Healing, Recovery, Selfishness, and Resolve. It's a fun one, all right. It's about the burn accident that I was in 1994 and how I came back from it and what a nightmare it was. It's a tough read, but it's probably the best reviewed book that I've had of the 6. So I invite you to check it out. Call Me Chris, A Tale of Healing, Recovery, Selfishness, and Resolve. Available now on Amazon.com, as well as at my website, chrisaikenbooks.com. You know what else is available right now? This episode that you actually came to see. Here it is.
All right, we're back here with another episode of Aftershocks on AftershocksTV.com. And joining us today, we'd like to welcome bass guitarist Alex Örn from Icelandic psychedelic rockers, the Vintage Caravan. Alex, man, how you doing? Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Or well, not physically be there, but yeah, you know. So yeah, but cool.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, good, man. Awesome. Yeah, great to have you on, man. So you guys are getting ready to release your 5th full length. It's titled Monuments. Comes out April 16th on Napalm Records. And before we start talking about how great this record sounds, just go ahead and talk about the recording of it in terms of how you guys were fortunately able to finish everything up right before the pandemic hit, as it sounds like it was quite the process to get this record done from what I read.
Yeah, man, it was a tough one, but well, not tough as in bad. It was just you know, we like to usually do around 3 weeks in the studio, and okay. We don't really record much after we leave the physical studio. We're not like, you know, overdubbing at home or anything. So so yeah, we did 22 days, wow. And we like to really work hard, so we would usually show up at like 9 in the morning and usually wouldn't be leaving until like after midnight, and so wow. 22 consecutive days like that. Yeah, it was pretty rough, but yeah, I mean, I feel like we really get the most out of us as artists when we can, you know, like some bands like to, you know, record in their hometown where they can, you know, if they have to go somewhere in the middle of the day, they can just hop and, you know, go to the grocery store or the post office or whatever you have to do. But we really like to immerse ourselves in the process, and that's, you know, when we're recording an album, we're not hopping off to, you know, have coffee with a friend in the meantime. You know,
sure.
we're doing an album, and that's just the thing that we're doing. So yeah, but it was very interesting. We were working for the second time with producer Ian Davenport from the UK, who's done a lot of cool bands, done Band of Skulls, for example, and yeah, worked a lot with. He did like some solo projects from like the singer of Supergrass and the drummer of Radiohead and stuff. So yeah, really impressive producer, and so all around just a fantastic, really fantastic process.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that is, you know, the first thing that stood out to me was obviously, yeah, the production, the mix are just fantastic. Also the songwriting, and really how your guys' sound has grown really even since the last record, Gateways. I mean, to me personally, there's no doubt that this is the best record you guys have put out to this point. I mean, the songs are just, you know, really strong. I mean, songs like Whispers, Can't Get You Off My Mind, those are just stellar tracks, and it has that, you know, Vintage Caravan sound. And I'm not trying to, you know, I'm trying to put my finger on what is different, but from what I could sense just from listening to the record, compared to the previous ones, it seems like you guys sort of simplified and tightened things up a bit, as some of the songs now are sort of more straightforward rockers, which to me I think has led to really you guys have creating songs with catchier hooks than the previous records. I mean, you still have your vintage, I mean, no pun intended, your vintage sound, you know, with the strong lead guitars and all the progressive parts. but I think overall the songs are just, they're more accessible to like regular rock audiences and fans rather than, you know, just to the serious, you know, psychedelic sort of stoner rock listeners. What was it specifically that you guys did differently on this record than the previous ones in terms of writing and recording, really, in order to get this great sound and the songs that you have on the new record?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's a, well, not a difficult question to answer, but there's a lot of stuff that comes to mind, and it's you know, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that when we like I haven't been in the band since the beginning, but I've already been in this band for almost 10 years. So
Sure.
and I'm 27 years old. So so it's like kind of, you know, it's like you grow as a person and you're growing up, you know. I mean, basically we're kids, you know, like and then it's like, you know, you're growing as a songwriter and you know, growing on your instrument or maybe on other instruments and yeah, it's just like you know, it's what 3 years since we recorded Gateways, and you know, it's just so much has happened in that time, you know. So you know, growing as songwriters especially, and I feel like we when we did the album Arrival, we were really into like this prog and stoner rock kind of mindset, and then you know, we felt like we kind of just did that on that album, and then after that we were just really working on trying to not necessarily make the most straightforward songs, but maybe just make the you know, the best songs that we could do, you know. So whether the song wanted to be short and simple or long and complicated, you know, that was kind of the goal. And I think with this record, all of the songs are written with no reservations, you know. It's just you know, the song just happens to go because that's just what the song needed to be, you know.
Okay.
And I think that really shines through because there's a lot of honesty on the record, like both in terms of lyrics and in terms of music. It's you know, it's about, you know, not being afraid to do simple stuff if it works, you know, or not being afraid to go complex if it works, both lyrically and musically, and also just in terms of the whole production side of things. It's like you know, every time you do an album as a band, you know, you basically you start very green and you know, not really knowing, because you know, knowing how to do music and knowing how to work the studio is two very different things. So and in my experience, usually what you actually want is the opposite of what you think is the right way to achieve that goal. So
Yeah.
in terms of like EQ and the compression and you know, and what gear to use and what so it's been a learning process, and I feel like now we've really you know, come to learn how it works and how we can sound the best that we can in a studio, and especially working with such a talented producer was just I really feel like we made our best work so far.
Yeah,
sure. Now Alex, just to piggyback off of that a little bit, how much does touring, and you guys are obviously touring warriors, you know, how much does touring change how you write, in that maybe now versus the first couple of records, now you write thinking about, well, we got to play these songs on the road, you know? Does that change how you write songs so that you pay more attention to it in the studio?
Not really, actually. It's funny, like I would think that would be a thing that we would think about, but somehow it just never occurs to us. And that's also something that we realize with every album, is that there's always a new challenge for playing the songs live, because, you know, sometimes when you start playing the songs live and there's a lot of like backing vocal parts and, you know, stuff is complicated, and you have this effect going on and that effect going on. And then when you, like now we're starting to do some like radio stuff and whatever, and we're realizing we actually never really played these songs, you know, completely. So so that's definitely a learning process, and but you know, it's of course within certain boundaries, we just try to create whatever, you know, what is the best that we can, you know, and then we just tried to do the best we can to replicate that live, you know. But obviously, it's like if you have 4 guitars and the Hammond organ and maybe 4 voices of lead vocals or something, it's it's tricky, you know. Yeah, no, but I think, you know, touring in general has just shaped us so much as a band, mostly just because it, you know, the more you play, the better you get, both personally and as a group, you know. So, and we've been touring a lot the last 6 years, so it's you know, it's like being an athlete, you know. You really just, it's all about you know, training, you know.
Sure.
Stamina, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely shapes us as a band. Stamina, definitely. Especially. You know.
Certainly. Well, Alex, you know, we're obviously talking about the new release moments or monuments, and Matt was saying about how so many of the songs are straightforward. I want to kind of touch on at least one song that really emphasized the prog feel more than I think anything I'd ever listened to from you guys, and that's Crystallized. You know, very progressive, very stretching of the sound. So talk a little bit about that song. Were you guys intentionally stretching out, or did that just come from an idea that somebody had and you all just sort of fell into it, or how did that one come together?
Yeah, you're actually dead on about that, because, you know, yeah, that one was, you know, came from Oscar's side, and it was more like, yeah, like wanting to do a little bit more prog, you know, do a little bit, go, because sometimes, you know, in the past we've been writing songs, and then somebody is like, hey, should we put like this super complex part here, you know, and oftentimes it just doesn't fit, you know. It just you know, and it would be more like putting it there for the sake of just doing something complicated, you know. But in this case, you know, the song was kind of crafted with that in mind, you know, and you know, occasionally it's fun to allow us to, you know, just really go just to go there, you know, and in that one I think it really worked out, you know. It's yeah, it's I definitely think it's one of the better songs on the new record. So, and but yeah, it's funny because also with that one, I mean, we with some of the parts, I mean, we had like so many different versions, and we did make it a little bit simpler, but we had like more complicated versions of some of the riffs, because if we really apply ourselves, we can really get into some deep stuff, and yeah, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but yeah, it was definitely a fun one to do, to record and to play. Yeah.
Sure. Now, how do you exactly go about writing as a band? Do you start with a part, or do you start with a jam? Because your music, just listening to it as a fan, it's, you know, there's some bands, you know, that they write from a riff. Then there's bands like yours that really feel kind of like, yeah, you guys are jamming, and then you sort of put something together and it just sort of made sense. How is it that the Vintage Caravan writes music? Is it from a part, or is it from a jam, or is it from both, depending on the song?
Yeah, I mean, it can happen a lot of different ways, but it's very rarely from a jam. Actually, the only song, the only song I think on the album was that was written from a jam was Whispers, actually. So that was something that came about in a jam, and then the song was written from there. And a lot of times in the past, we've somebody comes in with like a riff or two, and then we take it from there, and then we work it out in the rehearsal space, and you know, just do what feels naturally, and that's usually, you know, what feels naturally is usually the best way for the song to go. On this album, though, there's quite a few songs that were kind of like almost, or like, you know, like, you know, not almost ready, but you know, like maybe the majority of it was already written and then brought to the rehearsal space to try to work it out, you know. And so a little bit different writing process actually than usual. And but you know, it's like, we're also on this album we were trying to you know, just allow us to actually also experiment with just, you know, going places that we haven't been going before. And I mean, like there's a track on the album that the last track on the album, which is a very different process for us, because it's something like I had in my mind, and I had already recorded like a demo of it, but it was very complicated because it's not like a song you can just go in to the studio and play, just three guys, you know, because it's mostly acoustic guitars and synthesizers, you know. So so yeah, that was interesting to try that approach, you know, and then eventually just, you know, it just all came together when we got our friend in to do piano on it, you know. That was really when the when the thing just really came together. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. So Alex, you know, what really impresses, you know, me about you guys, that you have, you know, that obviously that late 60s, early 70s sort of proto metal psychedelic sound, but you guys also definitely put your own modern twists to it that I don't hear with a lot of the other bands within, you know, the genre that you're in. I mean, I'll just give you a quick example, like a band like Graveyard. Love the band. They sort of intentionally, you know, seek out a sound to where it sounds like it's classic 60s, like it was almost recorded back, you know, then compared to you know, a more modern one that you guys have. How do you guys go about playing this style of a music without it sounding like it was written and recorded, you know, in say 1969? I mean, how do you blend both the classic and the modern rock sounds together without it sounding exactly like one or another, or whether it's too modern or sounding too vintage? Because I think that's something that's pretty difficult to pull off, and it's very impressive that you guys are able to do that.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think there's a lot of things to that, actually. Like, you know, I would say, you know, Oscar, who is like, I mean, founding member of the band, he's a very, very 60s, very 70s, you know, and whereas I not really, you know, I'm not like, I really dig that stuff, you know, and I'm especially the prog stuff is something that I was always very into, but I come more from like, you know, like my parents are very young, you know, and I grew up more listening to just like 90s bands, you know. So yeah, I think it's a marriage of those kind of influences, and also, I mean, you know, when we started getting into this scene, you know, this whole scene of these retro sounding bands, there was this thing, you know, like we never really wanted to necessarily sound that much, you know, like that old school, you know. I mean, even though the stuff that we play is very inspired by it, it's like, you know, some of the albums that they're trying to make sound so 60s and so 70s with modern technology, it's just like, it just honestly sounds in some cases a little bit crappy, you know.
Yeah,
it's like, it's, you know, yeah, it's like, you know, you could get that sound and a lot bigger, fatter, clearer, you know, like by modern standards, you know, but it just ends up sounding like sometimes a bad modern recording, you know. And so in terms of like sound, I mean, we always just wanted to go for the sound that represented the band the most, you know, and you know, we're all about, you know, having like a really powerful kind of in your face, like a very present sound. So so yeah, I mean, I guess it's a part of the whole, you know, like we're part of this whole retro scene, but we never really felt like that kind of band. So in a way, we've kind of like semi-consciously been kind of like going away from that whole thing, you know, and just, you know, just kind of more labeling ourselves as a rock band, because I feel like, you know, we have as much in common with a band like Royal Blood as we do with a band like Graveyard, really. You know, it's all just rock and roll. So
sure. No, good point. So, yeah, definitely. Well, let's talk about, you know, a bit about your background growing up with rock, because it's not really every day that we get to chat with musicians that are from Iceland. I mean, especially who play this kind of hard rock music. So just talk a little bit about, I mean, how big or small, or, you know, whatever the scene is in Iceland when you grew up listening to and playing music. I mean, is this type of music, this hard rock music, is it really popular among the music fans and musicians there? I guess just talk a little bit about, your experiences growing up in Iceland with, you know, listening to hard rock and metal.
Yeah, well, no, actually now, especially now, there's a total void where, you know, where the whole rock scene should be, you know, and there's like,
Mm.
you know, and it's developed in a kind of a funny way. Like when we were growing up, there was this like really big, uh, you know, there was like this really big hype in the metal scene. You know, there was a lot of like death metal going on, and so like there was a whole community that got created about going to those kind of shows and like this whole metalcore stuff. And you know, in terms of like straight rock, I never felt like there was too much going on, you know, and but there's like a really big community of these like underground bands here, and it was for a long time just such a cool thing, you know. Everybody was just kind of friends and helping everybody out, and you know, everybody knew each other, and everybody would hang out at the same bars, and it was just a really cool scene, you know. And it's kind of developed now because now so many Icelandic bands have gotten picked up that now there's this like kind of gap. There's like super like small like underground bands, and there's like just big touring bands, you know. So and there's like not that much in between. And I think that also has something to do with like the gentrification of Reykjavik as a city, because there's been this massive tourist boom, and you know, and basically what happens in all gentrified cities is like you know, they demolish the music venues and the historical places and build fucking massive skyscraper hotels, you know.
Yeah.
And which of course is like backfiring like crazy now, you know, because I mean now it's just like you got a bunch of fucking empty hotels in a city that was once very beautiful, you know. And it's just yeah, it's not the same vibe anymore. But yeah, and I mean I truly kind of feel sorry for the smaller bands trying to, you know, get a foothold in the door now, because there's just there's like 2 venues or something that could play, you know. So but you know, I don't know, like rock has always been like very up and down here, and I'm really hoping that in the next years, like you know, now it's like more mumble rap is king, you know.
Is it?
I'm hoping that it's turning around in the next few years. Yeah. So yeah.
Sure. Hopefully, man. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, you brought up a good point too. I mean, you know, when you think of you know, obviously Iceland geographically is so remote to anything else that has live music and that has a scene, or where you know, label representatives, or just, you know, just the industry is in general. How were you guys really able to sort of break out? I mean, did you guys have to move to another, you know, part of Europe in order to get your sound heard and be able to play shows? I mean, how were you guys able really to break out of Iceland to where you become, you know, more of a global, very well-known, you know, hard rock band?
Well, it's funny. It's almost exactly what you said. We we got kind of recognized playing a lot in Iceland, and we did some festivals, and there was there's always been, well, since like 2012-ish, there's been like a pretty big journalist presence, you know. There was a few bands that kind of paved the way, especially in the rock and metal scene. There's been like bands like Solstafir have paved the way quite a lot, and so like in the festivals in Iceland, there was starting to be like a lot of you know, foreign journalists showing up, and you know, and I mean the scene, like, and the scene still is like, it's crazy how many talented bands you have here. It's like it's, you know, per capita, it's like yeah, it's quite amazing. So and what happens is all of these bands kind of started getting signed, you know, one by one, but the challenge that we faced when we got signed to Nuclear Blast, and we think, oh great, you know, so we're getting offered these tours, you know, and you know, we got offered a few festivals like the first summer, and it was all like the fees were all pretty low, you know, like way too low to cover flights to and from Iceland, because geographically it's a tough place to, you know, to be touring from. Sure. So what we did was like we moved to Denmark, or we got the idea to move to Denmark, and then a month later we were on a boat in Denmark with a car and a backline, and we just said to our new booking agent at the time, just book as many shows as possible, because otherwise we're not gonna eat, you know. So
Sure. Yeah.
so yeah, so and luckily he did, and that first year we played over 80 shows in mainland Europe.
Wow.
And the next year we did the same. We're living in Denmark for 2 years, and now actually we have kind of like a semi base in Belgium, where we like have this kind of yeah. So we have like we have backline in storage there. We have like an apartment that we can stay at, and then when we go tour Central Europe, we fly there and then go from there. And yeah, so it's impossible if you're always gonna for every show fly to and from Iceland. It's
sure.
Just, financially, it's just not good. So actually putting in those, yeah. So putting in the legwork in those first 2 years really helped get us to where we are now, and it would not be the same without it, for sure.
Cool. Sure. Now, Alex, not a secret, as we said before, you guys are touring warriors. I mean, you guys are always on there. It seems like the only time you come off the road is to take a break to record another record, and then you're right back out there. That being said, in the last year, nothing. Obviously the pandemic shut everybody down. What have you guys been doing to keep the energy flowing and to keep momentum moving forward as a band?
Well, we were in kind of a special situation when they started, because we had just finished recording our album, and like with everything in the Vintage Caravan land, stuff gets delayed and then gets postponed, or like whatever. It's always new stuff to deal with every week, so yeah, we like the album was mixing long into like August or something, and then we didn't get it wasn't properly mastered until like, yeah, I can't remember, like September or October or something. Okay. So yeah, that was already going on for a long time, and we couldn't really do much as a band. The things were fine in Iceland in last summer, so we managed to play a few shows, which was like a total godsend, at the time, and now it's kind of starting to be that way again. We're like we're able to do a little bit now, but for the most part, I mean, I think we've just been kind of focusing on just ourselves, and it's really, like you say, we've been touring a lot, so it's really in a way, it's kind of cool to get this time off. It's like because nobody can do anything about it. So, and when you're touring full time, it's like you don't have time for anything else. It's just a band, and it's hard to keep relationships, and you can't really go to school, or you can't really have a job or whatever. So it can be tough sometimes. So when this happened, I really just was like, okay, if this is the situation, then I'm just doing everything that I've been putting on hold for all these years, And
sure.
So yeah, I mean, I'm in school now, actually, and yeah, I've been focusing on my. I do a lot of like long distance trail running, and then I was writing a lot of music. Already wrote like maybe 2 albums worth of music, and yeah, just trying to do whatever what I can, and yeah, I mean, it's same for the other guys. Are really just trying to use this time to actually do stuff you can't do when you're out of the country for 6 months of the year.
Sure,
definitely. Well, the one thing that you definitely did during this time off was recorded an incredible new release. It's the Vintage Caravan. The name of the album is Monuments. And Alex, where should people go online to keep up with the band and buy the record and do all that stuff?
Well, there's always Facebook, Instagram, and we have a website. It's thevintagecaravan.eu, which is we wanted to have .com, but there's some kind of crappy trailer website that has the .com. So
nice.
Yeah,
awesome. Cool. Well, one more time, the name of the album is Monuments. The name of the band is the Vintage Caravan. And Alex, thanks so much for joining us here on Aftershocks.
Thank you guys so much. It was really a fun interview, and really appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.
All right, everybody, another great interview right here on Aftershocks TV. And before we go, just want to remind you one more time, make sure you get over and subscribe to the CMS Podcast Network, cmspn.com. You can watch, you can listen, you can subscribe to everything that we do. Not only us, but the classic metal shows, Shockwave Skull Sessions, Talk to Me. It's all there, one site, get 4 great shows. Never have to do anything again but be entertained. So check it out, cmspn.com, cmspn.com, cmspn.com. Until next time, folks.